Hi, I've been using Claude Code for about 6 months now, and I have developed full-scale applications, two complete iOS apps that are live on the App Store now. And let me give you some of my best tips that I have right now. I think the second tip is the most important one, but please do watch the whole video because I have come up with some of the best commands and things that you should be using in Claude Code. Without further ado, let's get started. Tip number 1. Claude Code is also available on mobile and web. If you're seeing this video before November 18, 2025, Claude Code has an introductory offer. If you use their web or iOS application to access any code on your GitHub repository, you get $250 of AI credits, which is like approximately about 40 hours of usage, 40 hours of programming on Sonnet 4.5. I didn't do the math on it, but I'm pretty sure the numbers would be same. Yeah, make sure you use your regular limits before you use your credits because your credits get consumed first and after that your regular limits are consumed. So the way it works is that your Claude account is connected to GitHub and you can choose a repository that's either public or private. To access private repositories, you need to authorize your GitHub. And after you have made every single change on the web platform, your Claude Code automatically creates a pull request and you can just go ahead and merge the pull request on your own. Just make sure you're exhausting your normal usage of the 5-hour limit that you get on your terminal, and then only you go ahead to use the credits, because if you have the credits, your normal limit is not going to be consumed. So just to maximize it, use your 5-hour limit first and then go ahead and then use your $250 free credits. But of course it expires before November 19th, so have fun. So let me just quickly show you how it works. Let me just open it on the web. Okay, to access it, go to claude.ai/code, and you don't need to be entering the entire URL. Just so that I can show you guys, let me go to claude.ai and you can see code option right here. So if you can click that, you go to claude.ai/code again. So the way it works is that you have to select a repository. It can be private, public. All of this will be available once you authorize your GitHub. So there's a bunch of repositories that I have given access to, so I can basically select one of them. 21 Easy Days was the project that I made, which was equivalent to 75 hard. I never got to completing it. You can do everything that can be done in Claude CLI, except that you're no longer consuming your 5-hour limit, you are consuming your $250 credit. I'm not going to be writing any code right now. We will be doing that in a future video though, so if you want to see that, hit subscribe. Also access it with mobile, as I said earlier. I'm sure you can use it in iOS, not really sure about Android. But if you're using it in iOS, click on the left tab bar and you can see the option of code, similar to how you saw on the web. Move on to tip 2, which is the most important thing in this video. If you watch this, you can almost watch nothing else and actually watch the whole thing, but tip 2 is the most important one. Tip 2 is something called clearing of context. Context is what your Agentic AI knows about you. So right now, this is the terminal that I'm using for writing code, and as you know, Claude Code is what I'm running. So I have already written a bunch of code, right? And you need to analyze the thing called context. To do that, you need to use /context, and once you do this, it's going to give you a visualization of how your context is consumed so far. You can see here that of the 200k tokens that's available for my context of Sonnet 4.5, I have almost used 120k. So what is important here is that every single thing you have conversed with Claude Code in a session makes up context. So you can see here that messages make up almost like 103k tokens, and that is a huge amount, right? And most of these tokens is not something that I need. So every time I'm submitting a new text, it's going to be taking up all these context and feeding it to Claude. For most of the times, I don't need much of these. So just because I'm giving Claude this much information every time, it's going to be consuming a lot of my usage limit, which is what you guys see on the left-hand side. So when you don't want to be doing this, you have to be constantly doing something which I call context clearing. And that is basically using /clear. And once you do this, let's try to hit context again. And you'll be seeing that our context is completely freely available. So you have to keep doing this again and again after you complete every single task, just to make sure that you're not using up too much of your usage limit. This can be really helpful if you're on the pro plan with just a limited usage of I think if you use it about 7 times of your daily limit, you hit the weekly limit. and you don't want to be hitting the weekly limit, because after that you basically can't code for how much ever time that is. So keep clearing your context after every single task has been done. This makes sure that you don't run out of your usage really fast. There's also this thing called /compact, and the way to use compact is very diverse. You can use it to shrink your context if you don't want to lose all your information, and you can play around with that, but I generally prefer clearing context because compact doesn't really work in the most efficient way. There are ways to do it, but maybe that's a video for a different time. For now, just remember you have to do /clear after you complete every single task, because that will greatly save you your usage limit, and that is probably going to be your biggest takeaway from this video. But let's discuss few more other tips. So the next tip is sort of stupid, but I want to tell you guys anyway. On the left hand side, you guys can see my usage limits, right? So the way I access it is by doing /usage, and all of us know it. The left one is actually outdated, so right one is the real one. So as you can see here, I've used almost 60% of my current session, and weekly session I've only used 7%. So your current session refreshes after every 5 hours. So the cheap trick that I do to maximize my usage is that every single time after waking up, I simply go ahead and type hi. And when I type hi, it basically does nothing. It basically just tells you, hi, you're working on this. But what happens is that your 5-hour countdown gets started. So eventually when you get ready and you come back to code, you have almost like 3 hours left to the reset. So if you do this way, each day you can get to use about 3 full sessions, and that is amazing. Just make sure if you're on the pro plan, you only can get to do this 11 times a week. I think 11 is the approximate number of daily limits that you can hit. If you just wake up early and hit a small hi, or say, good morning to Claude Code, that is going to go a long way. That is going to give you so much extra usage. And I think it's a little bit cheap trick, but it gets your work done. Tip number 4, and I think most of you would already know this, but I'll just tell you anyway. So this one is like an actually useful tip. So most of the times, Claude Code doesn't exactly know which file to look for. So it will search through all your files on whatever information it has to figure out which file needs to be edited. And this can get sort of complicated in certain situations. So let me show you. In this particular project, I have a lot of files which go by the name Bubble, because the whole project is called as Bubble Nest. I have 2 different files called as active users Bubble View, and I also have this one more file called as incoming request Bubble View. And these 2 files are almost similar, and there are like very minor differences. So this is something I call file tagging. So if I want to not confuse Claude Code further, I can just say make a change in incoming request Bubble View. Just because if I don't specify this file is where you should edit it, it could also confuse it with the other file, which is like active users Bubble View, right? This is no longer wipe coding. This is something you call as AI assisted coding, because you are now saying that this is the file where the changes need to be done, and you are sort of mindful about all the procedure that's going to happen. And this is going to keep a really good structure between the code, and also keeps you aware of what things are happening where. You can also greatly minimize your context usage, because instead of reading multiple files, your AI correctly knows that this is the only file that needs to be read. But of course, as a programmer, you need to make sure that you are specifying the right file and all that. Unless you're very sure that the code is not confusing, file tagging is the best way to go. And as the size of the code base grows further and further, file tagging is almost a must, and you should do it pretty much all the time, and have a proper architecture. That is just a side point. Tip number 5 is almost another absolute badass tip, because say if I'm recording something like this and I accidentally press enter, and there's a bunch of changes made, and I don't want any of those changes. So here no change was made, but imagine some change was made, right? And the change was something that you absolutely don't want. So in that case, you do this absolutely crazy command called as /rewind. And once you do this, it basically lets you go behind checkpoints and say, what was the code at the time where I hit clear? And it gives you a bunch of options. It either allows you to restore code or conversation or both. So code is basically very simple, right? So whatever code you had written till this point gets reset. and this is really beneficial. This is basically like setting the checkpoint, like how you do it in Git, and you can basically go back. So resetting conversation depends on how you want to use your context. If you feel like a lot of this conversation is useless and should not be in my context, then just go ahead and reset that as well. But if you feel like you want to retain this conversation in your context, then just reset code alone, and that should be sufficient for you. But rewind is really important because there have been a lot of times where I made a change and I did not feel that change was important, or if that change was breaking, then you need to absolutely use this rewind command. That brings us to tip number 6, and this is perhaps the most easiest tip so far. And this is like very simple because to whatever you do, right? Say you want to do something like, I want a new file made, not specifying which file because I'm not exactly thinking, but this is where Claude Code can think for you. Or better, it can do something called as Ultrathink. And the moment I enter it, you can see how there is like this really nice animation and there's this thing, right? So when you do Ultrathink, you would have also noticed, let me do it again, the bottom right says thinking on. What is happening here is basically that once thinking mode is on, you are activating the chain of thought prompting. It will go deeper on all the context that is available to you, but you have to remember that this is going to consume a lot more context on the messages front. If you remember, context gets classified as like multiple things. And while you're using thinking, because it's generating chain of thought, a lot of messages context is going to get produced, and it's going to take up more context, hence more usage. But from my experience, ultra thinking is always cool because it almost solves whatever problem you are going through. So to summarize everything that we have spoken so far, so after waking up, I'll just send hi or good morning to my Claude Code just so that the limits start kicking in. I will use /usage to check how much of my limit is left. Then I'll do whatever task I want to do. And while doing it, I will also make sure that if my task is going wrong, I'll use /rewind and go back. I will use /context and check how much of it is left. And after completing every small task, I will use /clear. And this is to make sure my context is always precise and doesn't have unnecessary messages in it, basically to save my usage limits. I'll be using /compact whenever necessary. And if anything goes wrong in whatever I've done so far, I'll be using /rewind. And if none of that is working, I'll be using /ultrathink. And that is basically everything we have discussed in this video. And this is the next few videos that I'll be making. If you have any suggestions or if you have any video suggestions of your own, do hit it in the comments. And if you want to check that out, also hit the subscribe button. A lot of effort goes into making this video, so also hit like. And that's pretty much it. And next video is basically me going to use the $250 credit that Claude Code is giving us. And if you want to watch that, hit subscribe as well. And I'll see you in another video, and I hope this video was helpful. Let me know in the comments again. So cool. Bye bye.